Minnesota, often called the land of 10,000 lakes, carries with it an image of peace, serenity, and natural beauty. The clear waters, vast prairies, dense forests, and snowy winters seem to paint a picture of calm. But if you look closer, if you listen carefully when the sun goes down and the wind begins to howl across the frozen ground, you'll realize that this state hides something much darker. Minnesota is not just about northern lights and quiet wilderness, it's about shadows that never disappear, footsteps that echo where no one walks, and whispers that float through the night, begging to be heard. For every lake, there's a legend, for every quiet town, there's a chilling story, and for every historic building, there's a ghost tied to it, forever restless. Some say Minnesota is cursed with memory, a place where tragic deaths, violent battles, and terrible accidents have left marks that refuse to fade. And those marks don't just sit quietly in history books. They rise in the form of spirits, strange sounds, phantom figures, and terrifying encounters that people swear are real. Imagine walking down a silent trail, the moon high above, when suddenly you hear footsteps crunching in the snow behind you, yet when you turn there is no one there. Picture checking into an old hotel, the kind where the wallpaper seems frozen in another time, only to wake in the middle of the night to see a shadowy figure standing at the edge of your bed, watching. Or stepping into an abandoned asylum, the air colder than outside, as if the walls themselves are still holding on to the screams of the forgotten patients who never made it out. Minnesota is filled with places like this, places where the living and the dead collide. Haunted theaters where actors still perform long after death, graveyards where apparitions wander among the tombstones, hotels where guests encounter spirits that never checked out, and houses where families were once torn apart, leaving behind a legacy of fear. Even the lakes, those beautiful shimmering lakes, are not safe from the paranormal. Many believe they hold the souls of those who drowned, forever trapped beneath the icy surface, rising on misty nights to reach out to the living. And the strangest part? These stories don't just come from long ago, not just from faded newspapers and yellow journals. They continue today. Visitors, paranormal investigators, even locals who've lived in these areas their entire lives, have experienced the unexplainable. Cold spots, flickering lights, doors that slam shut without wind, voices calling their name from the darkness, and sometimes full-bodied apparitions so real you'd swear they were alive until they vanish. What makes Minnesota especially terrifying is how ordinary these haunted places seem. A cozy inn, a grand old theater, a quiet cemetery at the edge of town, a farmhouse left to rot in the middle of nowhere, they look normal in the daylight. But at night they transform. That's when the legends awaken. That's when you realize that what you thought was just a shadow is actually something watching you. That the creak you heard wasn't just the building settling, but footsteps following you down the hallway. So tonight, we're going to step into the heart of Minnesota's most haunted places. Some of these stories will make you shiver, some will make you look over your shoulder, and some might even make you turn off this video because the fear becomes too real. But for those brave enough to stay, you're about to discover why Minnesota is considered one of the most haunted states in America. Get ready, because these are the top 15 haunted places in Minnesota. And trust me, by the time we reach the end, you'll never look at Minnesota the same way again. Haunted place number 1. Wabasha Street Caves, St. Paul, Minnesota. The Wabasha Street Caves sit carved into the sandstone cliffs of St. Paul, Minnesota, and from the outside they look like a strange little club frozen in time. But inside these caves are whispers of things that refuse to stay buried, because long before they became a tourist spot they were speakeasies and hideouts for gangsters during the Prohibition era, and it is said that even today you can hear the echoes of gunfire from a fateful night when 3 men were executed inside, their bodies supposedly carried away and hidden in the sand, never to be seen again. Visitors describe the caves as alive with shadows, the air is damp and cold, footsteps echo when no one is there, and glasses behind the bar clink on their own, as if unseen hands still serve phantom drinks, the spirits of mobsters, dancers, and patrons who never left, continuing their nightly parties in the dark. Musicians have sworn that instruments will play faintly in the distance, soft jazz drifting through the stone walls, only to fade when you get closer, and some say the chandeliers sway as though stirred by a passing figure, yet no breeze moves in the caves. Tour guides whisper of a lady in white who wanders the dance floor, her gown shimmering faintly under the dim lights, her face pale and sad. She vanishes the moment you blink, leaving behind nothing but the echo of high heels clicking across the stone, and others claim to have felt icy fingers brushing across their arms or the sensation of being watched by someone lurking just behind them. Many who dare to enter alone report a sense of dread so strong that their stomachs twist. They feel pressed down by the weight of unseen eyes, and the silence between the walls is broken by laughter that sounds too close, too real, yet the room is empty, and when the lights go out the caves feel endless, like a tomb for souls that cannot rest. The Wabasha Street Caves are more than a piece of gangster history, they are a resting place for the restless, a theater where shadows perform endlessly, where past sins echo through stone corridors, and where the line between the living and the dead blurs in the chilling silence of the underground. Number 2. Four Paws Restaurant, St. Paul, Minnesota. Four Paws Restaurant once stood as one of the most elegant and historic dining spots in St. Paul, Minnesota, but behind its charm and beauty was a story soaked in tragedy, love, betrayal, and restless spirits that many believe never left the mansion-turned-restaurant. Built in the 1800s, the Forepaugh House was the home of Joseph Forepaugh, a wealthy businessman whose life was marked by scandal. Rumor has it that Joseph had an affair with a young maid who lived and worked in the mansion, and when his wife discovered the truth, the house became filled with anger and despair. The maid, overcome with shame and heartbreak, is said to have taken her own life within the walls of the mansion. Some say she hanged herself from a chandelier in one of the rooms, while others whisper she leapt to her death from an upper window, her spirit forever bound to the house where her sorrow reached its peak. Joseph himself later died under suspicious circumstances, with some believing his grief and guilt followed him until the end. Over the years, diners and staff at Four Paws described eerie experiences that chilled them to the bone. Plates and glasses would suddenly slide across tables, chairs would scrape across the floor when no one was near them, and lights would flicker as if the spirits were making their presence known. Many swore they felt sudden cold drafts, icy chills that swept through the warm air of the dining room, leaving goosebumps crawling across their skin. One of the most frequent sightings is that of the maid's spirit, appearing in the upper rooms dressed in old-fashioned clothing, her face pale and sorrowful. She has been seen gazing out of the very window where many say she leapt to her death, her figure vanishing the moment you look too closely. Staff members reported hearing faint sobbing echoing through the hallways, the sound of a young woman crying alone in the dark. Guests often described an overwhelming sense of sadness settling over them, as if the walls themselves carried the weight of heartbreak, betrayal, and loss. Some even claimed that unseen hands brushed their shoulders or pulled at their clothing, subtle reminders that someone else was in the room with them. The ghostly presence of Joseph Forepaugh has also been felt, pacing through the house with heavy footsteps, as though searching for peace that never came. Even after the restaurant closed, the legends of its hauntings never faded. Paranormal investigators who visited reported unexplained voices caught on recorders, shadows moving across empty rooms, and sudden drops in temperature that could not be explained. For many, Four Paws remains a place where love turned to despair, where sorrow lingers in every corner, and where the spirits of the past continue to haunt the present. Number 3. Palmer House Hotel, Sauk Center, Minnesota. The Palmer House Hotel in Sauk Center, Minnesota, may appear to be just another charming old and tucked away in a quiet town, but to those who know its history, it is far more than just a place to rest for the night. It has earned a reputation as one of the most haunted locations in the state, and those who dare to stay there often leave with stories they never expected to tell. The hotel was built in 1901 on the very site where another hotel once stood, the Sauk Center House, which had been destroyed by fire. From its beginning, the Palmer House seemed to carry the heavy energy of the land it was built on, and whispers of hauntings soon followed. Over the decades, the Palmer House became a gathering place, but it also became known for something darker, something otherworldly. Guests and staff have long reported hearing footsteps echoing down the hallways when no one is there, doors opening and slamming shut on their own, and voices that seem to whisper in the dead of night. Objects move on their own, lights flicker without reason, and an eerie sense of being watched follows you through the building. The atmosphere is thick, and many describe an unshakable chill that creeps up your spine the moment you step into certain rooms. One of the most infamous parts of the hotel is Room 17. Countless guests have checked in only to find themselves disturbed by restless nights, plagued by vivid nightmares, shadowy figures at the foot of their bed, and an overwhelming sense that someone unseen is sharing the room with them. Some have even fled in the middle of the night, unable to handle the intensity of the haunting. Paranormal investigators who have stayed in room 17 reported capturing strange voices on recorders, cold spots appearing suddenly, and an unexplainable heaviness in the air that makes it difficult to breathe. Another well-known spirit believed to linger in the hotel is that of a little boy, often heard laughing or running down the hallways late at night. Guests have claimed to hear the sound of a ball bouncing or the giggles of a child, only to open their door and find the hallway completely empty. Some have even reported seeing the fleeting image of a small boy darting around corners, disappearing into the shadows as if he was never really there. The basement of the Palmer House holds its own terrifying reputation. Staff have long avoided going down there alone as the energy is suffocating and oppressive. Dark figures have been seen moving through the shadows, and strange noises echo off the walls. Some believe the spirits in the basement are far older than the hotel itself, perhaps tied to the land or the tragedies that occurred long before the Palmer House was built. Even the bar and lobby area are not safe from the paranormal. Guests have reported seeing apparitions sitting quietly at tables, vanishing into thin air when approached. Bartenders have described bottles tipping over and glasses shattering without anyone touching them. A few staff members have even admitted that they refuse to stay late at night, the feeling of unseen eyes following them becoming too much to bear. Paranormal investigators and television crews have spent nights inside the Palmer House, and nearly all left with chilling evidence. Shadow figures captured on video, unexplained cold drafts, disembodied voices calling out names, and objects moving without explanation have all been documented. Many investigators describe the Palmer House as one of the most active haunted sites they have ever visited. But perhaps what makes the Palmer House so terrifying is not just the activity but the variety of it. Unlike many haunted places tied to one tragic story, the Palmer House seems to hold many spirits, each with their own presence. Some are mischievous like the little boy. Others are darker, more oppressive like those that dwell in the basement. The building seems alive with energy, a place where the veil between the living and the dead is thin, and where spirits are free to wander. To this day, guests still check into the Palmer House, and many still leave with unforgettable stories. Whether it is the sound of footsteps pacing above them, the sight of a shadow figure standing at the end of the hallway, or the sudden icy coldness that makes the hair on their arms rise, the experience is always chilling. Some even say that once you stay at the Palmer House, you carry a piece of it with you, the memories of what you saw and heard lingering long after you leave. The Palmer House Hotel is not just a historic inn, it is a gateway to something beyond, something unseen, and for those brave enough to step inside, it promises an encounter with the unknown that will stay with them forever. Number 4. First Avenue Nightclub, Minneapolis, Minnesota. First Avenue Nightclub is one of the most iconic music venues in the United States, famous for its connection to Prince and for being a stage where countless legendary artists have performed, but behind the flashing lights, the pounding music, and the energy of the crowd lies a darker history, one that has given the nightclub a chilling reputation as one of the most haunted places in Minnesota. The building itself was not always a nightclub. Long before it became the heart of Minneapolis's music scene, it served as a Greyhound bus depot. Over the years, the depot saw its share of tragedies, from sudden deaths to accidents, and when the building was later transformed into a nightclub in 1970, it seemed those energies did not disappear. Instead, they lingered, waiting to make themselves known. One of the most well-known ghost stories tied to First Avenue is that of a young woman who reportedly took her own life in the fifth-floor bathroom. According to staff and musicians who have worked late nights inside the club, her spirit is still very much present. People have reported the sound of sobbing coming from empty stalls, faucets turning on by themselves, and a heavy sadness that fills the air the moment you step inside the bathroom. Some women claim that while using the restroom, they have felt the distinct sensation of someone brushing past them, only to find the stall doors wide open and no one else there. But the bathroom is not the only haunted spot inside the venue. Staff members working after hours often hear footsteps echoing across the stage or along the upper floors when the entire building is supposed to be empty. Lights turn on and off without explanation, doors slam shut, and faint voices can be heard calling from the shadows. Sound engineers have reported equipment malfunctioning in strange ways, as though unseen hands were tampering with the controls. One chilling story often shared by employees tells of a dark figure seen standing at the back of the main room, watching silently as if observing the stage. When approached, the figure vanishes instantly. Some believe this is the restless spirit of a past performer, unwilling to leave the place where they once poured their soul into the music. Others think it may be connected to the building's older history, when tragedy was a common visitor. The upper floors of the building are said to be especially active. Musicians who have stayed late to practice claim to hear faint singing coming from above, soft and distant, like an echo from another time. Security guards walking the halls at night often describe feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, as if someone is following just behind them, breathing down their neck. A few have even quit after terrifying encounters, refusing to work overnight shifts again. Perhaps what makes the hauntings of First Avenue so eerie is the stark contrast between its two worlds. By day and during concerts, it is alive, vibrant, pulsing with energy and joy, but when the music fades and the crowds leave, the silence brings the other side of the building to life. The ghosts of First Avenue are not loud or violent, but they are persistent, reminding everyone who enters that the past is never truly gone. Some say the spirits remain because of the emotional energy tied to the building. Thousands of people have come through its doors, each leaving behind laughter, sorrow, joy, heartbreak, and tragedy. A place that sees so much emotion is bound to hold on to it, and First Avenue seems to soak it in, storing it like fuel for the supernatural. Today, First Avenue remains a world-famous venue, attracting performers and fans from across the globe, but to those who know its darker stories, the nightclub is not just about music. It is a place where the living and the dead share the same space, where echoes of the past mingle with the sounds of the present, and where some nights, after the crowd has gone home, the true residents of the building step out from the shadows. Number 5. The Fitzgerald Theater, St. Paul, Minnesota. The Fitzgerald Theater is the oldest surviving theater in St. Paul, a grand building with a history that stretches back over a century, filled with performances, applause, and the weight of thousands of stories. Built in 1910 as the Sam S. Schubert Theater, it has hosted vaudeville acts, traveling shows, concerts, and dramatic performances. Over the decades, it has become one of Minnesota's most beloved cultural landmarks, but alongside its reputation for art and beauty comes something much darker. The theater is said to be deeply haunted, its shadowy halls echoing with spirits that refuse to leave the stage behind. One of the most frequently reported apparitions inside the Fitzgerald is known simply as Ben. He is described as a tall man in old-fashioned clothing, often spotted near the stage or sitting quietly in the balcony as if waiting for a performance to begin. Theater staff and audience members alike have reported seeing him vanish right before their eyes, leaving behind nothing but a lingering chill in the air. Some believe Ben may have been a stagehand or performer who died tragically during the theater's early years, his spirit forever tied to the building he once loved. The stage itself is an epicenter of activity. Actors rehearsing late at night claim to hear footsteps pacing back and forth behind the curtain when no one else is present. Disembodied voices whisper from the wings, faint but urgent, as though calling cues or warning of danger. Stage lights flicker on and off by themselves, and props have been known to move mysteriously, even when carefully secured. Performers often describe a feeling of being watched from the darkness, a heavy gaze that makes the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end. The basement of the Fitzgerald is equally unsettling. Workers have long reported sudden drops in temperature, doors slamming shut without warning, and the sound of chains rattling in the distance. One janitor claimed to have seen a shadowy figure darting across the hallway, only to discover that he was entirely alone. Another swore he heard someone breathing heavily just behind him, but when he turned around there was no one there. The balcony area carries its own legends. Some patrons have claimed that during quiet moments of performances, they felt someone sit down beside them, the seat cushion sinking with weight, yet when they turned, the seat was completely empty. Others insist they have seen ghostly faces watching from the upper rows, pale and expressionless, dissolving into nothing when noticed. One of the strangest occurrences linked to the Fitzgerald is its connection to sound. Musicians and technicians say that certain parts of the theater produce unexplainable echoes, almost like ghostly applause or phantom laughter that comes from nowhere. During recordings for radio shows, engineers have occasionally picked up faint voices or static bursts that cannot be explained by equipment issues. It is as though the past itself tries to bleed into the present, using the theater as a stage where it can still be heard. Why is the Fitzgerald Theater so haunted? Many believe it is because of the immense emotional energy the building has absorbed. For over 100 years, it has been a place of passion, creativity, joy, sorrow, and tragedy. Actors pour their hearts onto the stage, audiences laugh and cry, and sometimes death itself lingers in the wings. That much emotion does not simply vanish, it imprints itself onto the walls, the floorboards, and the very air, creating a perfect environment for hauntings. Yet, for all its ghostly reputation, the Fitzgerald Theatre remains a beloved institution. Performers and staff often speak of the spirits not with fear, but with respect, as though they are guardians of the building, watching over every act that takes place. They are reminders that art is eternal, and that even death cannot silence the voices of those who once lived for the stage. Number 6. Gray Cloud Island, Washington County, Minnesota. Gray Cloud Island is one of the most mysterious and unsettling places in Minnesota, a quiet stretch of land surrounded by water and shrouded in eerie legends. Located in Washington County, the island appears peaceful at first glance, with trees swaying in the breeze and the river surrounding it like a protective barrier. Yet beneath that calm beauty lies a darker truth, one that has made the island infamous for ghostly encounters, unexplained sounds, and chilling apparitions. The island is steeped in history, and much of its haunted reputation comes from the land's ties to Native American tribes. It is said that the island was once a burial ground, a sacred place where the spirits of ancestors were laid to rest. Over time, as settlers arrived and the land was disturbed, stories of restless spirits began to spread. Many believe the island remains cursed, its soil holding the echoes of those who were never allowed to rest in peace. Visitors often describe the atmosphere of Gray Cloud Island as heavy, almost suffocating. Even in daylight, there is a sense of being watched, as though unseen eyes are tracking every move. At night, the air becomes even stranger, thick with silence that is suddenly broken by unexplained noises, footsteps crunching on gravel, the sound of voices whispering in the distance, or the faint cry of something that sounds almost human but not quite. One of the most famous ghostly encounters on Gray Cloud Island is the figure of a spectral man, often described as tall and dressed in dark, tattered clothing. Drivers passing through the area late at night claim to see him standing on the side of the road, his face pale and expressionless. Some say he has been seen waving his arms as though trying to warn travelers away. Yet when anyone approaches, the figure disappears into thin air, leaving behind only a chill in the air and a pounding heart. Others report seeing ghostly apparitions wandering through the woods, flickering lights that look like lanterns moving among the trees, or strange shadows darting across the path. Paranormal investigators who have visited the island say their equipment picks up high levels of electromagnetic activity, sudden temperature drops, and unexplained voices captured in recordings. One group even claimed to hear chanting, low and rhythmic, echoing through the night air, though there was no one else nearby. Local legends also speak of phantom vehicles. Drivers report hearing the roar of engines and the squeal of tires on empty roads, only to look behind them and find no cars in sight. On foggy nights, headlights are said to appear out of nowhere, following close behind before vanishing without a trace. These ghostly cars are believed to be echoes of past accidents, moments of tragedy replaying themselves over and over again. Gray Cloud Island has long been a source of fear and fascination. For some, it is simply a quiet community with a history of spooky rumors. For others, it is a true paranormal hotspot, a place where the veil between the living and the dead is impossibly thin. The reports are so frequent and consistent that many locals refuse to drive through the island at night, warning visitors that the spirits here are not friendly. What makes the island even more unsettling is its unpredictability. Some people pass through without experiencing anything unusual, while others are shaken to their core by the strange phenomena they encounter. It is as if the spirits choose when and to whom they reveal themselves, reminding outsiders that they are still here, watching, guarding their land. Gray Cloud Island stands as one of Minnesota's darkest and most haunted locations, a place where history, tragedy, and legend intertwine. It is not a tourist attraction, not a place of fun and excitement, but rather a reminder of the weight of the past and the spirits that refuse to fade away. Those who dare to visit must do so with respect, for the island is alive with energy, and it is said that the spirits here do not easily forgive disrespectful trespassers. Number 7. Glensheen Mansion, Duluth, Minnesota. Glensheen Mansion rises along the shore of Lake Superior, a sprawling estate surrounded by manicured gardens, stone paths, and the endless waves of the Great Lake rolling against the rocks. At first sight, it looks like a perfect postcard scene, the type of place where you would expect to stroll on a sunny afternoon and admire history preserved in elegance. Yet beneath the surface, Glen's Heen carries a story drenched in tragedy and shadows, a story that has earned it the title of one of the most haunted places in Minnesota. The mansion was built in the early 1900s by the wealthy Congdon family, who spared no expense in designing a home that reflected their status. With dozens of rooms, sweeping staircases, and lavish details, it seemed destined to remain a place of joy and grandeur. But the night of June 27, 1977 changed everything. Heiress Elizabeth Congdon and her nurse, Velma Petola, were murdered inside the house, their lives cut short in an act of greed and betrayal that shocked the entire state. The brutality of the crime left a permanent stain, and even decades later, visitors claim that the echoes of that night still reverberate within the mansion's walls. Tour guides, staff, and guests have described countless strange occurrences over the years. Cold spots linger in certain hallways, no matter how warm the rest of the house may be. Lights flicker even when the wiring has been checked and cleared. Doors creak open slowly as though someone is entering, only for the room to be completely empty. On the grand staircase where Velma was attacked, some visitors feel sudden chills rushing down their spines, while others swear they hear the faint creak of unseen footsteps climbing the steps behind them. The most unsettling reports often come from Elizabeth's former bedroom. Visitors who enter sometimes describe a heavy, oppressive energy, as though the air itself is pressing against them. Some feel as though someone is watching them from the corner of the room, though no figure is ever visible. On rare occasions, a faint sound of crying has been reported drifting from the room, soft and distant, yet sharp enough to chill the bones of those who hear it. The kitchen and servant areas of the mansion have their own strange stories. Objects seem to move slightly when no one is near, like utensils shifting on a counter or a chair pushed gently away from a table. Whispers have been heard in these areas, voices too faint to understand, but clear enough that staff refuse to linger alone after dark. Then there are the shadow figures. Several guests have claimed to see dark shapes flitting past doorways or standing silently at the end of a corridor before vanishing into thin air. These fleeting glimpses often happen near the staircase or in the upper floors, where the most violent parts of the tragedy unfolded. Even outside the mansion, the grounds carry an eerie stillness. On quiet nights, visitors walking along the shoreline say they feel followed, their footsteps echoing unnaturally, as if someone is pacing behind them. When they turn around, no one is there. Some even claim to see faint figures moving through the windows of the darkened mansion, even though the building has been closed for the evening. Glen's Heen Mansion today is a museum, open to the public and celebrated for its architecture and history. Yet for those who believe, it is more than a piece of preserved heritage. It is a place where the living and the dead intersect, where the beauty of the home is forever intertwined with sorrow, betrayal, and restless spirits. To walk its halls is to step into history, but also to risk brushing shoulders with those who refuse to leave, tied eternally to the mansion by the violent events of one unforgettable night. Number 8. Lakeview Cemetery, Buell, Minnesota. Lakeview Cemetery sits quietly on the edge of the small town of Buell, surrounded by trees that sway with the wind and cast long shadows over rows of weathered gravestones. At first glance, it looks like any other peaceful burial ground, a place where the dead are laid to rest and the living come to pay their respects. But for those who have walked through its gates after sunset, the cemetery holds a different reputation, one of whispers, ghostly lights, and shadows that move where no one stands. Locals have long told stories about Lakeview, claiming that strange orbs of light drift between the headstones late at night. These glowing orbs hover low to the ground or float gently above the graves, only to vanish the moment someone tries to approach them. Some believe these are spirits trying to make contact, while others say they are warnings, reminders that the dead here are restless and do not wish to be disturbed. Visitors have also reported hearing footsteps crunching along the gravel paths when the cemetery is otherwise empty. The sound will draw closer, slow and deliberate, as though someone is walking just behind them. But when they turn, no one is there, only the silence of the night and the steady rustling of the wind through the grass. The cemetery is said to be especially active on misty nights, when fog rolls across the ground and the gravestones seem to fade in and out of sight. In these conditions, some claim to see shadowy figures standing motionless among the graves. The figures never move closer, never make a sound, they simply linger, watching until the fog thickens and swallows them whole. One of the most unsettling stories is of a woman in white who is said to wander the cemetery grounds. She appears late at night, drifting between the older sections of the graveyard. Her figure glows faintly in the darkness, her head bowed as if in mourning. Some believe she is searching for a lost loved one, unable to move on, her sorrow keeping her tied to the earth. Others fear she is something darker, an omen of misfortune for those who cross her path. Even in the daylight, there is a heavy stillness in Lakeview Cemetery that many visitors cannot ignore. Birds fall silent near certain sections, and the air feels colder as though something unseen is lingering. Some who walk the grounds leave with a sense of being drained, as if the energy of the place clings to them long after they have stepped outside its gates. For the people of Buell, Lakeview Cemetery is more than just a resting place. It is a reminder that death does not always bring peace. The spirits here, whether lost, mourning, or simply unwilling to let go, seem to remain close to the world of the living, making Lakeview a place where the line between life and death feels dangerously thin. Number 9. Anoka State Hospital, now Regional Treatment Center, Anoka, Minnesota. Anoka State Hospital is one of the most infamous and chilling locations in Minnesota, a place where the past seems to linger in every corridor, every abandoned ward, and every locked cell. Built in the early 1900s, it was once a sprawling asylum meant to treat the mentally ill, but like so many institutions of its time, the treatments were cruel, the conditions harsh, and the suffering of patients left deep scars on the walls and the land itself. Stories tell of overcrowded wards, patients left restrained for days, and experiments carried out under the guise of medicine. Electroshock therapy, ice baths, and isolation rooms were all part of daily life here, and the echoes of those practices seem to remain long after the hospital ceased operating in its original form. People say that trauma of such magnitude does not simply fade away, it leaves behind energy, restless spirits, and shadows that cannot be explained. Visitors and staff alike have spoken of strange occurrences. Doors creak open by themselves in long-abandoned wings, footsteps echo in hallways where no one walks, and the faint cries of patients can be heard in the night. Some report the feeling of hands brushing against their arms or shoulders, as though unseen figures still wander the building, reaching out in desperation. Cold spots appear suddenly, chilling the air so much that breath becomes visible even in the warmth of summer. The tunnels beneath the hospital are said to be even more terrifying. These underground passages once connected various buildings and were used to transport patients away from public sight. Today, those who dare to enter describe the overwhelming sense of dread that grows stronger the deeper one goes. Whispers have been heard in the dark, strange shapes dart across the dimly lit halls, and some claim to see faces peering out from shadows only to vanish the moment they look again. One particularly eerie tale involves the old cemetery near the hospital grounds, where many patients who died without families to claim them were buried in unmarked graves. Locals say the restless spirits of these forgotten souls still wander the land, drawn to the place where their bodies were laid to rest without ceremony or remembrance. It is not uncommon for people to feel an overwhelming sadness when walking near the cemetery, as if the grief of hundreds of lost lives still weighs heavily on the air. Though it has been repurposed as a regional treatment center, the history of Anoka State Hospital cannot be erased. Paranormal investigators who have spent the night there report overwhelming evidence of ghostly activity, from recordings of disembodied voices to equipment detecting sudden spikes of energy. Some say that the spirits trapped here are not malevolent but are instead echoes of torment, endlessly repeating the suffering they endured in life. Others, however, believe that darker forces lurk in its depths, feeding off the pain that has stained the institution for over a century. Even now, the mention of Anoka State Hospital stirs unease among locals. It is remembered not only as a place of healing but as a place of horror, where thousands lived and died in despair. Its looming presence, with its stark architecture and chilling history, makes it one of Minnesota's most haunted sites, a reminder of how thin the veil between past and present truly is. Number 10. Washington Street Bridge, Minneapolis, Minnesota. The Washington Street Bridge in Minneapolis may look like just another ordinary bridge spanning the river, but when night falls, this place transforms into one of the eeriest and most unsettling sights in the city. The bridge has stood for generations, connecting communities and carrying countless people across its steel and concrete frame. Yet beneath its ordinary purpose lies a dark and sorrowful past, a past filled with tragedy, despair, and unexplained hauntings that continue to terrify those who dare to cross it after dark. For decades, the Washington Street Bridge has been linked with stories of suicides and untimely deaths. Many people who struggled with despair have chosen this spot as their final resting place, leaping into the cold waters below. Locals say the bridge carries an energy that is heavy and suffocating, almost as if the weight of sorrow from countless souls has soaked into the very structure of the bridge. When you walk across it, you may feel a sudden chill sweep through you, a sense of overwhelming sadness that is difficult to explain. It is as if the spirits of the departed are reaching out, pulling you into their world of grief and darkness. One of the most chilling reports involves the sound of footsteps echoing behind those who cross the bridge late at night. People have described hearing the slow, deliberate sound of someone following them, only to turn and find the path completely empty. The footsteps stop when they stop and continue when they walk again. It is as if someone unseen is shadowing their every move. Some have even heard whispers in the wind, faint voices calling out from the darkness, voices that sound desperate, mournful, and sometimes even angry. Others tell of phantom figures appearing suddenly along the railing. Witnesses describe seeing a man standing at the edge of the bridge, staring down into the water below. At first, it looks like someone in distress, someone about to jump. But when approached, the figure vanishes completely into thin air, leaving no trace behind. Police officers who patrol the area have even responded to calls of possible jumpers, only to find no one there. These ghostly apparitions are said to be the spirits of those who took their lives on the bridge, forever repeating their final moments. The waters beneath the bridge are said to hold their own mysteries. On quiet nights, people claim to see strange ripples on the surface of the river, even when the air is still and no boats are near. Some say they have seen pale faces staring up from beneath the water, faces that quickly disappear when noticed. Fishermen who cast their lines from the banks have reported hearing splashes, followed by the sound of crying, though no one is ever found. It is as though the river itself holds the echoes of the lost. The energy on the bridge becomes even more intense during foggy nights. When mist rises from the river and blankets the area, the entire structure seems to change. Shapes appear in the haze, shadows dart from one end to the other, and glowing orbs of light have been spotted floating above the water. Some drivers crossing during foggy evenings claim to see a figure standing directly in the middle of the road, forcing them to slam on their brakes. But when the fog clears, the figure is gone, leaving only the pounding of the driver's heart as evidence of what just happened. Psychics and paranormal investigators who have visited the Washington Street Bridge believe it is a place where the veil between the living and the dead is incredibly thin. They describe the overwhelming presence of restless spirits, individuals who cannot move on because their deaths were filled with sorrow, pain, or unfinished business. Some claim to have picked up strong readings of electromagnetic energy along the railings, particularly in spots where suicides were most frequently reported. Others have recorded chilling EVP sessions, capturing the faint sounds of cries for help, or even the word jump, whispered through the static. But it is not only sadness that lingers here. Some believe the bridge is haunted by something darker, a force that feeds on the despair of those who come near it. A few brave souls who have stood on the bridge at midnight describe the feeling of being pushed, as though unseen hands are trying to force them over the edge. While skeptics dismiss this as imagination or vertigo, those who have felt it insist that something malevolent lurks here, something that wants to claim more lives. Despite its terrifying reputation, the Washington Street Bridge remains a vital part of the city, a place crossed daily by commuters, joggers, and cyclists. But those who know its history and those who have experienced its strange phenomena know that it is much more than just a bridge. It is a monument to sorrow, a gathering place for restless souls, and a hotspot of paranormal energy that has made it one of the most haunted locations in Minnesota. So, if you ever find yourself in Minneapolis and decide to cross the Washington Street Bridge late at night, be prepared. You might feel the icy chill of unseen hands brushing against your skin. You might hear footsteps pacing just behind you though no one is there. You might even see the shadow of someone about to leap into the water, only to vanish before your eyes. The bridge stands as a reminder of life, death, and the fragile space between, a place where the living and the dead still walk side by side. Number 11. Calvary Cemetery, St. Paul, Minnesota. Calvary Cemetery in St. Paul is one of the oldest and largest Catholic cemeteries in Minnesota, and though it is a sacred resting place for thousands of souls, it has also gained a reputation for being one of the most haunted graveyards in the state. Stretching across acres of quiet land filled with countless headstones, crypts, and family plots, Calvary looks peaceful during the day. But when darkness falls, the atmosphere changes, and an unsettling presence seems to rise from the ground itself. Locals, visitors, and even caretakers have reported eerie encounters that suggest many of the dead here have never truly found rest. For over a century, Calvary has been tied to strange activity. The cemetery has witnessed countless burials, some tragic, others sudden, and many linked to epidemics, wars, and untimely deaths. People say the energy of those lives cut short lingers among the graves. Some visitors claim to feel an overwhelming heaviness in their chest as soon as they step inside the gates at night, as though invisible eyes are watching them from every corner. Others describe an unshakable feeling of being followed as they walk between the rows of tombstones. The crunch of their footsteps on the gravel paths seems to echo louder than normal, and sometimes they hear a second set of footsteps close behind, though no one is there. Apparitions are often reported at Calvary. Several witnesses say they have seen a woman dressed in black roaming among the headstones, her figure faintly glowing under the moonlight. She is said to be a mourning mother, searching endlessly for her children buried somewhere in the cemetery. Others have seen shadowy figures drifting between the markers, only to vanish when approached. Some of these spirits appear near older sections of the cemetery, where the gravestones are worn and names barely visible, suggesting they may be souls long forgotten, desperate to be remembered. Strange lights are also common here. At night, glowing orbs have been spotted weaving between the graves, sometimes hovering over a headstone before disappearing. Paranormal investigators who brought cameras and recording devices have captured mysterious flashes of light on film, though no natural explanation was found. On certain nights, when the air is still and the cemetery is cloaked in silence, faint whispers have been recorded, voices speaking in low tones that cannot be fully understood. Some have even caught names being called out, as though the dead are trying to communicate with the living. One of the eeriest parts of Calvary Cemetery is its mausoleum. Those who have dared to step inside after hours report hearing knocks on the walls, echoing footsteps on the stone floors, and the sensation of icy cold air rushing past them, even when the doors are closed. Some claim they have seen faces pressed against the glass windows of the crypts, only to realize there is no one inside. Caretakers themselves have admitted to uneasy experiences. A few have heard bells ringing faintly from graves long after burials ended, a chilling echo of an old legend when safety coffins with bells were used to prevent accidental burials. Others tell of seeing figures watching them from a distance as they closed the gates at dusk, only for those figures to vanish into thin air. Calvary Cemetery is not just a place of memory, it is a place where the line between the living and the dead feels paper thin. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, walking through this cemetery after sunset can shake even the bravest soul. The silence becomes deafening, the air grows cold, and the weight of countless spirits seems to press against you with every step. Some come to visit loved ones, some come to pay respect, and some come seeking answers to the paranormal, but almost all leave with the same feeling that Calvary Cemetery is alive with more than just history. Number 12. St. Cloud State University, St. Cloud, Minnesota. St. Cloud State University may look like an ordinary campus filled with the sounds of students, lectures, and daily life, but beneath its academic charm lies a chilling history that has made it one of the most haunted locations in Minnesota. For decades, stories have spread of restless spirits wandering the halls, unexplainable noises echoing in the night, and a heavy, almost suffocating energy that lingers in certain buildings. To some, the hauntings are just campus legends, but for those who have experienced them firsthand, the stories are far too real. One of the most haunted spots on campus is Holes Hall, a former dormitory that has gained a dark reputation. Students who lived there often reported hearing doors slam shut on their own, footsteps pacing the hallways at night, and voices whispering just beyond the edge of hearing. Some claim to wake up in the middle of the night to see shadowy figures standing at the foot of their bed, only for them to vanish when the lights were turned on. Even after Holes Hall was closed, paranormal enthusiasts still whispered that its walls hold secrets that refuse to fade away. Another eerie place is Shoemaker Hall, one of the oldest dormitories on campus, where strange events have been documented for years. Residents describe cold spots in rooms, objects moving across desks by themselves, and feelings of being watched when alone. Some say they have seen a ghostly woman in white gliding silently through the corridors. According to legend, she may be the spirit of a young woman who took her own life in the building many years ago. Her sorrow seems to remain trapped inside, replaying itself in endless silence. Riverview Hall, one of the historic buildings on campus, also carries its own share of ghostly tales. Built in the early 20th century, its Gothic architecture already gives it an eerie appearance. Students and staff working late have reported hearing faint piano music drifting through the air, even though no one was inside. Some describe seeing figures moving behind the windows, though the building was supposed to be locked and empty. It is not just isolated buildings that carry these hauntings, the entire campus seems to have pockets of paranormal energy. Security guards have told stories of patrolling the grounds late at night and catching glimpses of figures walking ahead of them, only for those figures to vanish into the darkness. In other cases, alarms have gone off in locked buildings with no evidence of entry, as though unseen hands were moving inside. Students who have spent time alone on campus after hours often describe an unnatural silence that grows heavier as the night deepens. The wind might rattle the trees outside, but inside the atmosphere feels charged, as though the past is trying to push through the present. Some believe the hauntings are tied to the land itself, which has a long and layered history before the university was even built. St. Cloud State University is a place of learning and growth, but it is also a place where history has left scars that cannot be erased. Every whispered legend, every ghostly encounter, and every unexplained sound seems to reinforce the belief that the campus is alive with more than just the living. For some students, the hauntings are nothing more than background noise, part of the school's strange charm. For others, the experiences are enough to send them rushing to transfer out as soon as possible. Number 13. The Soap Factory, Minneapolis, Minnesota. The soap factory in Minneapolis has earned a terrifying reputation as one of the most haunted buildings in Minnesota, and for good reason. Once a massive industrial space where animal carcasses and fats were processed into soap and other products, the building is soaked in the memories of death, decay, and hard labor. Its very walls seem to carry the weight of suffering, and those who enter often describe an atmosphere so thick with unease that it feels like stepping into another world, one where time and light bend unnaturally. The building itself, with its peeling paint, cracked concrete, and echoing hallways, already feels unsettling before a single ghost story is told. But when the stories begin, they transform the soap factory from an eerie industrial relic into a place where the supernatural seems to flourish. Over the years, it has been a hotspot for paranormal investigators, artists, and thrill seekers, all hoping to uncover the secrets trapped inside. Many of them leave shaken, certain they have encountered something far beyond explanation. Visitors have reported extreme temperature drops in certain rooms, even on hot summer nights. Shadows are often seen darting across the walls, moving with purpose though no one is there. Whispers echo through the cavernous space, bouncing from wall to wall, sometimes soft and sometimes sharp, as though unseen voices are mocking those who dare to enter. People describe a feeling of being watched constantly, followed by a sudden sense of dread, as though something ancient and hostile is closing in. One of the most disturbing legends tied to the soap factory is that of a demonic presence said to linger in its depths. Some investigators have claimed the building is not just haunted by restless spirits of the past, but by something much darker, something inhuman. Accounts tell of visitors being scratched by unseen claws, shoved violently to the ground, or suddenly overwhelmed by feelings of anger, despair, or fear that vanish the moment they step outside. Some have even described seeing twisted, monstrous figures in the shadows, only for them to vanish when approached. The basement is often described as the most haunted area of all. Cold, damp, and heavy with a stench that seems to rise from the very floor, it has left countless visitors unnerved. Strange lights appear in the dark, doors slam shut, and the sound of chains dragging across the ground has been reported more than once. Many believe this part of the building is where the energy is strongest, as though all the suffering and death from its history has settled into the foundation itself. Adding to the unease is the building's more recent past as an art space, where horror-themed installations and haunted house events were staged. Actors and staff working these events often had experiences that went far beyond stage scares, footsteps echoing when no one was there, props moving on their own, and feelings of icy hands brushing against their skin in the dark. Some even refused to return after being confronted by shadows that seemed to move independently of any light source. The soap factory has become infamous in Minnesota not only for its history but also for the intensity of its hauntings. Skeptics who walk in dismissing the stories often leave pale and shaken, unwilling to admit what they may have seen or felt. For those who believe, the building stands as proof that certain places can hold on to darkness, feeding it, allowing it to grow stronger over time. Step into the soap factory and you are not just stepping into history, you are stepping into a space where the line between the living and the dead dissolves, where industrial decay has become a breeding ground for spirits, and where something far more sinister than ghosts may be waiting in the shadows. Number 14. Winona State University, Winona, Minnesota. Winona State University might look like any other campus from the outside, a place of learning filled with the laughter of students, the ringing of bells, and the steady rhythm of academic life. But beneath its polished exterior, there are stories whispered between students and staff, stories of shadows that linger where they should not, of footsteps that echo in empty corridors, of doors that slam shut when no one is near. The university carries a reputation as one of the most haunted schools in Minnesota, and those who have experienced it firsthand speak of things they cannot easily explain. The residence halls are often where the first stories surface. Students lying awake at night report hearing the sound of someone pacing just outside their doors, slow and deliberate, only to find the hallway empty when they look. Others say they hear scratching at their doors or whispering voices on the other side, as though something unseen is trying to get in. In some dorms, objects have been known to move on their own, books sliding off shelves, chairs scraping across the floor, doors opening without a touch. One of the most chilling tales comes from students who have seen apparitions in their rooms, often standing silently at the foot of their beds. These figures vanish the moment the lights are turned on, leaving behind only a coldness that clings to the air. Some students have described waking in the middle of the night to the feeling of someone sitting on their bed, pressing down the mattress though no one is there. Others have said they felt hands gently brushing their hair or touching their arms in the dark, only to open their eyes to find the room empty. The academic buildings carry their own hauntings. Classrooms that should be empty ring with the sound of chalk scratching across the boards, and lights flicker on in locked rooms. The sound of typewriters and shuffling papers has been reported in offices long abandoned, as though the echoes of past faculty remain, working late into eternity. In the library, some students claim to have seen a woman in old-fashioned clothing wandering between the shelves, her head lowered, her face pale, who disappears into thin air when approached. Legends tie the hauntings to the land itself, to tragedies and deaths that have occurred in and around the campus. Some believe the spirits of past students remain here, their energy bound to the university where they once lived and studied. Others think the activity is darker, that something ancient tied to the ground long before the buildings existed now roams the halls. There is one story often told about a particular dormitory, where residents claim a young woman appears in the mirror. She is said to stand behind students brushing their hair, her reflection pale and sorrowful, before vanishing in an instant. Those who see her often feel a lingering sadness, as though her grief attaches itself to them. Security guards making rounds at night have their own accounts. They tell of hearing voices in locked rooms, of elevators moving between floors on their own, of seeing figures standing in darkened hallways that disappear when the flashlight beam touches them. Some guards refuse to patrol certain areas alone, insisting that there are places where the shadows are simply too heavy, too unnatural. What makes Winona State University so unsettling is not just the frequency of these encounters, but the way they seem woven into daily life. For many students, hearing footsteps at night or seeing shadows move in the corners has become almost normal, a part of the atmosphere of the campus. Yet beneath this uneasy acceptance lies fear, the kind of fear that keeps lights on at night and doors locked tight, even when no one should be around to open them. At Winona State, education and the supernatural seem to coexist, the living sharing space with the dead. The question that lingers for every student and visitor is whether these restless spirits are simply memories replaying themselves, or whether they are reaching out, trying to make contact, trying to remind the living that they are never truly alone. Number 15. The Landmark Center, St. Paul, Minnesota. The Landmark Center stands tall in downtown St. Paul, its Romanesque architecture striking and beautiful, its red turrets and stone walls a reminder of another era. Built in the early 1900s, it was once a federal courthouse and post office, a place of law, order, and heavy judgment. But behind its grand design and civic importance lies a much darker legacy. one that has given the building a haunted reputation that persists to this day. The history of the Landmark Center is heavy with tragedy. This was not only a courthouse but also a site where some of the most notorious gangsters of the Midwest were tried. Stories say that criminals, mobsters, and desperate men stood before judges here, their lives hanging in the balance, and many of them did not leave the building as free men. Executions, deaths, and despair soaked into the walls, and for many that lingering energy has never left. Visitors and staff alike report chilling experiences throughout the building. The courtrooms, now quiet, are said to echo with the sound of footsteps pacing back and forth, as if long-dead lawyers or prisoners are still waiting for their fates. The sound of voices, low, urgent whispers, has been heard when no one else is there. In some rooms, sudden drops in temperature cause a deep chill, as though an unseen presence has entered. One of the most infamous hauntings tied to the Landmark Center is connected to Jack "Machine Gun" McGurn, an associate of Al Capone. Though history records his trial and downfall, legend suggests his spirit and those of other gangsters remain trapped here, restless and angry. People have seen shadowy figures moving through the halls, figures that vanish when approached, leaving only the echo of boots on marble floors. The basement is often cited as the most haunted part of the building. It was once used as a holding area for prisoners, a place of chains, cells, and hopelessness. Those who have ventured down into the lower levels report hearing metallic clanging, the sound of chains rattling, and muffled cries echoing through the stone corridors. Some claim to feel an oppressive weight in the air, a pressure that grows heavier the longer you stay. Elevators inside the Landmark Center are said to move on their own, opening their doors on empty floors, carrying unseen passengers from one level to another. Security guards have reported strange sights on their rounds, including a man in an old-fashioned suit standing at the end of a hallway, only to vanish into the wall. Even more chilling are the apparitions of judges, still robed, seen seated at benches in the empty courtrooms. These figures fade into thin air when anyone approaches, leaving the visitor shaken and cold. Some believe these are not just residual hauntings, but intelligent spirits aware of the living, still bound to their work, still judging from beyond the grave. Today, the Landmark Center is used as a cultural center, filled with art exhibits, events, and music. By day, its halls are filled with tourists and families, its grandeur admired and celebrated. But by night, when the lights dim and the crowds disperse, the atmosphere changes. The shadows seem thicker, the silence heavier, and the air colder. Those who remain after dark often speak of being watched, as though the spirits of judges, prisoners, and gangsters still linger, unwilling to release their grip on the building. The Landmark Center is more than just a historic building in St. Paul. It is a monument to both justice and despair, beauty and darkness. Its walls carry the weight of the city's history, and its spirits serve as a chilling reminder that the past never fully dies. For those brave enough to walk its halls after sundown, the Landmark Center is a place where the living and the dead still cross paths, and where echoes of judgment and sorrow refuse to fade. We have walked through the haunted heart of Minnesota, we have stepped into caves and theaters, old hospitals and forgotten bridges, we have wandered among tombstones and cemeteries where the air grows cold and heavy, and we have stood in mansions where whispers travel through locked doors. The state of Minnesota holds a chilling truth: it is not only the land of lakes and beauty, but also a land where shadows cling to history and spirits refuse to rest. Think back to the Wabasha Street caves, where gangsters of another time are said to still linger in the smoke-filled halls, a place where the past has soaked into stone walls, and footsteps echo even when no one is there, or Fourpaws Restaurant, where tragedy turned love into lingering sorrow, a place where the scent of perfume drifts through empty rooms and a woman in Victorian dress is glimpsed only for a second before vanishing into nothing. Remember the Palmer House Hotel, where guests awake to voices in the night and feel unseen hands pressing down on their shoulders, a place where spirits have turned rooms into prisons of memory. And First Avenue nightclub, once a Greyhound station, now a venue alive with music, but also with shadows of the lost and the restless. Then there is the Fitzgerald Theater, where actors of long ago still take their ghostly bows, and Grey Cloud Island, a place soaked in both history and grief, where those who enter often leave with fear in their hearts. The Glensheen Mansion tells its story in silence, but its hallways echo with the murder of Elizabeth Congdon, the tragedy woven into the fabric of its elegant design. Lakeview Cemetery in Buell carries the weight of countless souls, and in Anoka State Hospital, Screams of the past seem to rise again in the cold winds that sweep through its abandoned wards. Then there is the Washington Street Bridge, where despair has left a mark so heavy that passers-by often feel chills running down their spines, as if unseen eyes are fixed on them from the darkness below. Calvary Cemetery holds sorrow in its soil. St. Cloud State University whispers to those who wander alone at night, and the soap factory in Minneapolis has grown infamous as one of the darkest places in the state, with shadows and phantoms that seem to follow visitors as if hunting them. Winona State University adds its voice to the ghostly chorus with stories of restless students and figures moving where no one should be. And finally, the Landmark Center in St. Paul, majestic, historic, but still a place where judges, criminals, and shadows of the past seem to linger forever. Each of these places carries a story, a fragment of history that refuses to fade. Some say these are just tales, exaggerations whispered by locals to keep the curious entertained, but others, those who have felt the chill, those who have seen the figures in the corner of their eye, they know that Minnesota's haunted places are not simply legends, they are scars on the land, scars that still bleed into the present. So if you ever find yourself walking past one of these haunted locations, if you step into the Palmer House Hotel, or cross the Washington Street Bridge on a quiet night, or find yourself staring up at the Landmark Center as the moonlight hits its towers, remember, you may not be alone. The air might shift, a shadow may move where none should, and you might feel the cold presence of someone or something that still lingers just beyond the veil. This journey through Minnesota's haunted history has been chilling, but there are countless more stories still waiting in the dark corners of America, waiting in the forgotten buildings and the abandoned halls. So if you enjoyed this journey, if you felt the chills, the suspense, the weight of the unknown pressing against you, then subscribe to the channel, join the community of those who dare to step into the shadows, because there are more stories to tell, more ghosts to uncover, and more nights to spend listening to the whispers of the past. Like this video if you enjoyed it, share it with someone brave enough to walk beside you through haunted lands, and do not forget to turn on notifications so you never miss the next descent into darkness. And as always, I will leave you with a warning: the places we talk about are real, their histories are real, and their hauntings, well, that is for you to decide. But remember this: the next time you walk down an empty street in Minnesota, when the wind grows cold and the night feels heavy, maybe you are not as alone as you think. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep your lights low, your ears open, and your courage close, because the ghosts of the past are still here, waiting.